From the Delta Sky Club
Welcome back, Miss Klein.
to the Jet Bridge, Delta Airlines relies on 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to power operations and serve customers faster. Together, we're putting 5G into the hands of ground staff so they can better assist on-the-go travelers with real-time information throughout the airport. This is elevating customer experience. This is Delta Airlines with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
This is Doug Gottlieb from All Ball with Doug Gottlieb. Listen, I'm going to get serious for a minute. The hate in our country is getting out of control. In fact, it's sadly at an all-time high. But it's going to take all of us to stop it. I mean, we're all on the same team in this country. So let's take a break from our hate so our team can regroup. We need to take a timeout against hate. Visit standuptoallhate.org to help. And join me in calling for timeout against hate by following at What's Up With Hate or posting the blue square emoji.
It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I'm your host, John Schmeelk. We like to talk to this guy at least once every season and every offseason, every year. So we figure at the bye, we'll bring in Chris Bisignano from Giants Insider to talk some Giants football. And Chris, you know, usually the bye week, you can relax a little bit, you can stay calm, and, you know, things come as you wait. You can watch other games, not a whole lot going on. But not the case for the Giants. I guess we did get to enjoy a football Sunday, but early Monday morning news breaking, the Giants making a change at quarterback, going with Tommy DeVito as a starter this week. Drew Lock as the backup, Daniel Jones as the number 3. Just give me your reaction, and then we can kind of dig into it a little bit.
Not surprised. I think we all expected Daniel to be benched, right? A couple things came into play. One, just wasn't playing good enough. The Carolina loss was not pretty. And the elephant in the room, John, where he has that $23 million injury settlement if he can't pass a physical in March. And now look, Joe Shane and Brian Dable will never say that, but we know that played into it. You can't come out and say, well, we're going to sit him because we have this settlement, because that would be a problem with the players union. So it was a combination of all that. That's why Daniel's number 3. They're going to take a look at Tommy again, which is not a surprise. I know a lot of people are stunned by that because Locke is making $5 million. I'm not surprised by it at all. The simple fact is, John, is that Daniel and Drew Lock will not be on this roster in 2025. And they're going to look at Tommy again. He did some good things with Dable last season. They're going to look at him pretty hard again to see if he is going to be on this roster in 2025. So that's what it comes down to. Like you said, not a quiet bye week. Monday morning, we all got the news that we were pretty much expecting. And if you did not expect Daniel Jones to be sitting for the future, then I don't know what planet you've been on this season, because without question, this was a no-brainer, and it's now official.
Yeah, the team was 4-6. You know, it's a different conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And his numbers are better, and they're not last in the league in scoring. It's a much more difficult situation, and then the business part becomes much less important, right? Because you're winning football games and all that sort of stuff. But the bottom line here is that the reason they made the change was because of performance. I mean, the team is averaging fewer points per game than any other team. You go to Munich against one of the worst defenses in football, and you only score 17 points. And, you know, I think all of us thought when the Giants decided to bring Daniel back at the end of the 2020 season, and I said this with Paul on Big Blue Kickoff on Monday, you know, the goal there was that was the floor of his performance, right? And you would hope that he would continue to improve from there with more years under Dable. You get a better line in front of him, better weapons around him, and you would see an improvement in his numbers and the production. You know, last year you can throw out, it was such a mess, everything going on around him. He didn't have a chance. But this year, look, the protection was better. The weapons were better. But the performance and the offense, which comes from that, again, it's not all the quarterback. There's other things we'll talk about in this podcast that need to get corrected as well. But, you know, it's the most important position on the field. And if you're trying to, you know, spark things and start looking ahead, this was one of the logical times to do it, having the extra practice this week, the extra walkthrough with the bye. Otherwise, you could do it after the Thanksgiving game, I suppose. But at 2-8, I think it made sense to pull the trigger now.
Absolutely, John. Like you said, with the bye week, you get Tommy up to speed this week. You know, you didn't want to do it. You obviously couldn't do it after this game Sunday with the short week, Dallas. And And the Carolina game was the final nail. Let's face it, John. I mean, like if the Giants win that game, and we're not even having this conversation, Daniel would have been the quarterback Sunday. But the offense, look, it's just what's the biggest thing with Daniel in his career, in his time here is very inconsistent, not able to elevate. You know what I mean? Against that Carolina team and coming out and not playing well, 2 red zone interceptions and all that. There's no better time to do it than now. The season is over. Everybody knows that. Now you start looking ahead. And John, look, we know this, bro. We're around this team. It's not old Daniel. They're not 2-8 because it's everything's Daniel. Everybody has a hand in this, but he is the quarterback, and his job is to get his team in the end zone and win games and elevate his teammates. And Daniel just didn't do that. Just way too much inconsistency. And now Dable's going to move on.
Yeah, look, and here's the thing, Chris. Like, it's always a rough day for an organization, right? When you put that type of investment in a player, you have to move on from him. If you know Daniel, you know what a good dude he is, how hard he works. Everyone around here, and if you know him, like, you want him to succeed because he's the type of guy that does everything the right way. And I know a lot of fans are excited because, they've been asking for this for a while, a certain group of the fan base, right? But, deciding to make this change is the easy part, right? The easiest thing would have been for Daniel to continue to perform better, improve, and then that, you stick with the contract and he's your guy. Now it gets tough because it's the easy part of the next phase. The tough part is finding out who the next guy is going to be and how you're going to acquire him. Because as you well know, as many organizations around football can attest to this, finding a franchise quarterback is a very difficult thing to do.
John, it's the hardest thing to do. I mean, you see it all over the league. And, just because, and say, just for argument's sake, the Giants finish top 3 and they get their quarterback. They feel like you don't know how that's going to work. You don't know how that's going to work out. Look at all the misses the last 10 years in the draft with top draft quarterbacks. I mean, there's a ton of them.
I mean, Chris, one of the most highly rated guys coming out that I've ever seen in my lifetime was Trevor Lawrence. Yep. I mean, and look how he's played. Has he been, they just gave him all that money, but certainly it has not been what they wanted it to be.
Oh, not even close. I mean, you could even use the word regression with his game. I mean, he's not even close. Everybody thought he was the next Andrew Luck and all that. Remember that, John, when he came out? And his game has regressed. No question. From last year, from the second half of last year to this year, he's not the same Trevor Lawrence. So I know everybody's excited. Like I said, we're going to get our quarterback. You don't know how they're going to evaluate and scout these guys, who they're going to like. Then you don't know if they're going to hit on top of that.
And Chris, you don't even know if they can have the opportunity to pick the guy that they decide they really like.
Yeah. I mean, look at this year's draft and, the guys that were taken after Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Well, obviously Joe Shane and Brian Dable didn't have those guys rated where they were taken and, right after those guys. I mean, they had Penix available. They had all those, but that's not what Shane and Dable, they didn't have them, and the scouts did not have them rated there. So you don't know how they're going to scout these guys, how they're going to rate them, who's going to fluctuate, who's going to go down. It's very, very difficult. The toughest thing to do in the 4 major sports is to find that franchise quarterback. So there's a lot of uncertainty, John, and with this organization moving forward.
All right, that's the future. Now let's take a look at the rest of the season, Chris. What are you thinking in terms of DeVito, what you want to see from the offense as this season kind of moves forward here?
Yeah, I think Dable said it the best today, John. He says, we're getting him in there to get a spark. That's what you want to see from Tommy. He gave it last year. He provided that spark a lot last year. That's what you're looking for. You got to get some more touchdowns. Got to move the ball on 3rd down. Okay? Make some good decisions and all that. Turnovers. Can't have turnovers that Daniel had last week against Carolina. 2 big turnovers. Okay? So you lead that spark in the offense. Tommy, without question, at times provided that last season. And that's what they're going to look for this season moving forward. To get that offense, get a little spark going, move the ball, be better in the red zone, which they have not been good at all, and try to take it from there. We'll see.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
From hobby farmers to weekend gardeners and everyone in between, Tractor Supply trusts 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to make shopping more personal. Together, we're connecting over 2,200 stores with 5G business internet and powering AI so team members can match shoppers with products faster.
You're all set.
This is enriching customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. So, Chris, you mentioned, I'll talk about some of the Giants at the bye stuff, and we'll start on offense here. We already talked about the quarterback. You mentioned it with the red zone production, and I did some manual research over the bye week. And as you well know, the Giants have not won the turnover battle in any individual game this year, right? They've either been even or they've been minus in every game.
Right.
So I'm like, boy, 10 games, that's a lot. So I went back and I looked it up. I went back to 2013. I could not find a streak as long as 10 games in a single season. So I emailed one of our stat services here. I say, hey, guys, can you find this for me? Has there ever been another time, or when's the last time the Giants went 10 straight games without winning the turnover battle? And they got back to me, and for a single season, Chris, and this goes back to 1950, it is the longest single season streak in the history of the franchise. 10 straight games without winning the turnover battle.
John, I was just going to say, I think the number is 0 times, but I didn't want to jump on it because I wasn't 100% in that, but there
are 2 other streaks that go from one season to the next across seasons, but I don't like to count those because it's 2 different teams. And that was just 10, by the way. So that would still be a tie here. And here's the best part of it. And this is the stat I gave on Big Blue Kickoff on Saturday and then again on Monday. So of those streaks, I'll give you the top 5 or so. In 1976, they had a 9-game streak like that. They went 0-9. In 1973, they had an 8-game streak like that. 0-7-1. 2003, they had an 8-game streak like that, 0-8. So those are the top 3. Other ones, 2-5, 0-6, 2-5, and 79, 83, and 2019. So this is why I say it's not just the quarterback, because I'm looking at 5 other streaks or 6 other streaks like this, and in every one of those streaks, the record's just as bad, if not worse, than this year. And those are all different quarterbacks. So, and this is not just the offense giving the ball away, and we'll get to the defense too, but it's a combination with this particular number.
Yeah.
If you're not winning that turnover battle, it makes it really difficult to win games. And I'll give you one more stat, and I had pulled this from the same guys that do those stats, and they sent this stat over today, and I'll bring it up here because I think it is telling. And I asked them, hey guys, can you just give me, NFL stats this year in terms of what teams' records are when they win turnover ratio and when they don't? So this year, when teams are +3 or better in games, they're 16-2, right? Not surprising. When they're +2, they're 30-9. When they're +1, they're 45-19. All right? When they're even, they're exactly at 500, 44-44. When they're -1, they're 19-45.
19-45.
Yeah, -2, 9-30, and then -3 + 2 and 16. So do you want to know why? I know it's a boring stat. Nobody likes to talk about it. If you keep losing the turnover ratio, or even if you're even, your chances of winning are not great in this league, especially when you're not one of the more talented teams in the National Football League.
John, absolutely. And you know what, John? It's not a boring stat. I know people are like, I really don't want to talk. But no, it's key in this league. It's key. I mean, what we saw a couple of weeks ago in the Lions when Goff had 5 interceptions and still won that game, I have never seen anything like that before. I mean, look at the stats for -1, John.
I know.
19,
I couldn't
19-45?
Yeah, I could not believe the -1 and the +1 were as stark as they were. That took me completely by surprise. And just so people understand what the winning percentage is in that, because I think they gave that to me, when you're +1, 70% winning percentage. 70%. That's
70.
Broncos.
Yeah, John, I was shocked that when you gave me that +3, that there was actually 2 losses in that. I guess one of those was that Lion game.
Yeah, one of them was the Lions game, correct.
Was the Lion game. I figured that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, but that, I mean, no, like, John, like we just said, it's not all Daniel. I know people want to destroy me for that, and they want to say, come on, Chris, the quarterback. It's everybody. This defense, John, you look at the defense this year, which has been good at times and not so much other times. The one interception on opening game against Minnesota was a deflection that Muasau had. And they haven't had one since. And John, correct me if I'm wrong. I was thinking about this the other day, that they haven't even been close. Usually you get some guys, right, John? Usually you'll get somebody on a cover 2 to come over to have a drop.
Same thing, Chris. They haven't dropped any. They haven't dropped any. Like, they haven't had any chances. And you figure, and look, some of this you can be critical of the players and the coaches, whatever, that's fine. You see in games every week, some quarterback just airmails a pass 5 feet above a receiver's head and it goes right to a safety. Like they haven't even had luck to get one of those.
John, we saw that yesterday. I don't know if you saw the Chicago game, but Jordan Love airmailed the ball, and
Yep.
and the kid Smith come down with the pick at the goal line. And how many times, John, did we see when Zay was over here, when McKinney was here? How many times he'd come over and had the ball in his hands and dropping? But the point I'm making is they haven't even come close to interceptions, which is, John, it's mind-boggling to me that usually when you have only a few picks, guys, you could look back and say, oh man, if this guy just came down with those two balls, if the safety rolling over the top just came down with that ball right, John, unless I'm mistaken, I don't even recall one ball a defensive back had in his hands, or me and you could have said on a Monday morning, hey, Chris, man, that ball's got to be caught. Or John, look at that ball. It's got to be caught. Not one.
I don't remember one either.
It's mind-boggling to me, John. That hasn't happened. It really is.
No, it is. And look, and that's one stat that's huge. And this is the one that Joe Shane talked about at his presser last week. That's the other one. And that's the red zone stuff, Chris. I mean, look, I went through this. I looked at, I did this last week. It's good use of my time. I went through every red zone drive in each game, and I tried to see like what happened on each drive. Yeah. So they have 7 red zone drives that have ended in turnovers, where you get 0 points, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumble, and 1 turnover on downs in week 1 against the Vikings. That's 7. You had 3 touchdowns get called back by penalty. So that's 3. So that's 10 potential touchdowns that you'll lose just right there. They have 4 sacks in the red zone, which, given how many sacks they've given up overall, that's actually a fairly big number.
Yes, it is.
And when they're inside the 30-yard line, they have just where is the scoring rate here? I had it somewhere. They only have here's the good one. In the red zone, Chris, they only score, and this is field goal or touchdown. We know that their touchdown rate's at 40%, and that's bad. But just scoring outright, they have a 71% scoring rate inside the red zone, which means on 30% of their red zone drives, they come away with 0 points.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're
how you're the worst offense in the league in terms of scoring?
Yeah.
That's how.
That's how.
You can't walk away with 0 points. And 4 missed field goals, by the way, too, is in there.
Yeah. Well, hence why you're 32nd in the league in red zone offense. Right there. And you can't win. John, you better have a top 3 defense, top 5 to win games with those stats. And the Giants, as we know, do not have that type of defense. They're just not good enough roster-wise to overcome mistakes like that. Mistake after mistake after mistake. That stat you just gave me, John, was mind-boggling. 7 times turnovers in the red zone. 7 times. 70% rate of scoring, period. I mean, 30% you don't score inside. I mean, that's John, that's why teams go 2-8.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
And what's the answer there, Chris? Because I did think about this and I didn't find any real trends. The only thing I could see and think maybe they could do a little bit more is of leaning into the run a little bit more, especially how good they've been with Tracy since. And fans want to blame not having Saquon for this record, by the way, Chris. The Giants are like the 5th best running team in the league since Tracy became the starter. Like the running game is not the problem here, folks. It's not. No. So maybe lean into the run game a little bit more and just pound it, get downhill a little bit. That's the only really kind of solution that I have, except just play cleaner football, which I know is easier said than done.
John, and you're right. That's easier said than done. There's a few things, John, that I feel maybe could improve that. And one of them is definitely like I feel Dable has gotten away from the run at times in the red, like you said. And I feel a tight end should have been way more involved in the red zone possessions. And that includes Bellinger. I mean, for weeks I was saying, can you imagine if you had Daniel on the field, Bellinger and Theo, and you just did a boot or a play action, send Bellinger out in that flat? I mean, that would shock teams because they haven't seen it on tape. So to me, it's everybody once again. It's Daniel, but you can't look Dable too at times. It's like, okay, why are we doing this? We have a big tight end, right? Well, why isn't he more involved in the red? And you don't see it, and it's really hurt them, And like you said, John, let's not look at it and go, "Oh, you know what, Chris? There's no Barkley. That's why." No, you got guys like, you got guys like Tyrone Tracy who's running the ball well. Okay, you got that. You could run the ball. Okay, So it's a combination of a lot. I was kind of hoping to see a little more tight ends in the red, John. We really haven't seen that, you know. And like you said, I feel Dable at times has gotten away from that run, you know, and I think it's hurt them, man. Instead of leaning on that run a little bit more, they really haven't.
And then the last thing I'll bring up on offense, just before we jump over to the defense, is they still explosive plays. They've actually done a pretty good job in the run game. They're tied for the ninth most rushes of 20 plus yards. Tracy's been great. That's
Yep.
not an issue. But if you look at completions, they're still ranked 28th in completions of 20 or more yards. They've only had 19 through 10 games. That's less than two per game.
Hmm.
If you're not going to be good in the red zone, you better make big explosive plays for touchdowns, and they're not doing that either, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's something. Tommy doesn't have. Daniel's probably got a better arm than he does in terms of just actual physical arm strength. But if Tommy can be a little bit better on some of those deep balls and be a little bit more accurate and hit them when they're there, I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing that can, besides obviously the red zone stuff, really boost some of the scoring is getting some of
Yeah.
the more of those explosive pass plays.
Absolutely, John, because you can't just rely on 10, 12 play drives, dude. You need those
And by the
chunk
way, another
plays.
stat to back you up, they lead the league in length of scoring drives. No one has an
Yeah.
average scoring drive longer than what the Giants do, to your point.
Yeah, and it's tough to win like that, John. You
Very
need
tough.
the big splash plays, those 20 plus plays, and it just didn't come from Daniel, you know? And it didn't come from Daniel this season. And it's tough to maintain 12 play, 10 play drives and score touchdowns. It's not easy in this league, man. You're not going to win many games. You need those big plays, and the Giants just haven't. Even with Malik, right? Even with you just haven't seen it this season. And Daniel has been inconsistent on his attempts. On the times he's gone down the field, he's just been very inconsistent, and it's mind-boggling at times, John. I got to be honest with you, because you got guys with speed out there, and you had a much better offense. You have a much better offensive line this season in pass pro, and it still hasn't been there.
Yeah, so let's talk about the two positives on offense, Chris, before we go over to the defense.
Yeah,
And you had it first. Oh, look, I'm not going to say the offensive line is a top 10 unit and that's fixed, but the offensive line has been better this year. And you have to be happy with how Carmen Brasilo's kind of put this unit together. And I thought it was a good start for Evan Neal last week on his way back.
absolutely.
Really good
Hmm.
in the run game, and he flashed some good stuff in pass pro, too.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, like, why Evan wasn't in there a little bit earlier, because he played well. He played well last week, and when Andrew went down, he went with the Josh thing, and then they went with Hubin and all that, and then they finally moved Illumino over and put Neal in. And I tell you, man, we were all wondering, right, John, what's Evan going to look like, right? And he played well. I mean, you got to give credit when credit is due. The kid played well last week. And before Andrew went down, this was a good pass pro offensive line. A pass pro line that we haven't seen in years. Don't forget, this is a team last year that allowed 85 sacks. Now, of course, I know it's not all on the offensive line, but the number was still 85, and that is ludicrous. So that was a much better line. I think Priscilla's done a good job in a lot of ways this year. And you have to like what Calm has done with Neal. Now, we'll find out more Sunday, Tampa. Evan's progress. But man, I tell you what, for a guy who hasn't played in a while, I thought he played really well last week. So, and then, Lumino of a left tackle. And if Evan plays like he did last week, and you know what, John, I heard so many people telling me last week, oh, Chris, come on, they played Carolina. They had 10 sacks going in, 12. Hey, you know what, John?
You got to
He
start
played
somewhere, bro.
most, he played no, but he played most of his snaps against Jadeveon Clowney in pass
You did.
pro. And Jadeveon Clowney is not Jadeveon Clowney of South Carolina. I understand that, and back in Houston days, but he's still a pretty good edge guy, okay? And I thought Evan did a heck of a job on him.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought the run game blocking better than the pass game blocking. But again, first start in a long time. I think you like a start. Now you hope there's elevation and improvement from here. Other thing on offense, Chris, you got to be happy with the job Tyrone Tracy and Malik Neighbors have done early this year. Those seem like draft picks
Yeah.
that are going to work out.
Oh, absolutely. No question. I mean, you look at Tyrone, John, you say to yourself, hey, we got our back for 2025. We have our back, with Devin, but Tyrone's our back. No question. I mean, three 100-yard games. Who expected that? Nobody saw this coming. The kid is a solid back, man. His vision is incredible for a guy that was a receiver his whole college career, except for his last year. His vision is unbelievable, and he brings it too, man. He runs hard, man. He'll bring it. He brings a punch to you. So he's been a pleasant surprise. Malik Neighbors, obviously, we saw this Johnson day one of camp, how dynamic this kid is. Does he have to tighten up some stuff? Yes. No question. Look, I always say it like it is, and I love Malik, and I've been raving about him since the last OTAs. Last spring's OTAs, but Malik also has to tighten up some stuff as far as maybe some route running. And obviously, we know we had a few big drops this season in key spots. But are we really worried about Malik? Is this kid? No, I mean, this kid's a true number. He's going to be a true number one. He's a number one. He's a dynamic talent and all that. So, the Giants have a number one heading to next year. They have their running back heading to next year, and that's always a plus because we haven't been able to say we've had our number one receiver, a true number one for a while, man. So,
No, I'm with you.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
From the Delta Sky Club
Welcome back, Miss Klein.
to the Jet Bridge, Delta Airlines relies on 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to power operations and serve customers faster. Together, we're putting 5G into the hands of ground staff so they can better assist on-the-go travelers with real-time information throughout the airport. This is elevating customer experience. This is Delta Airlines with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Citizens will donate $750 to the Giants Foundation for each scoring drive during the 2024 season. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. All right, Chris, defensive side of the ball. Let's start with the areas for improvement first. And the run defense still not there, man. I mean, I think that was a big focus for Brian Daboll in bringing in Shane Bowen, and Shane Bowen has a great history in Tennessee of stopping the run, but they just have not been able to get the job done. What have you seen there?
what I've seen is a few things, and you heard this mentioned a million times this season. Gap fits. And I remember I've talked to Micah McFadden a few times in the locker room this year. Micah, talk to me about these gap fits and all that. And he'd just be like, listen, Chris, if one guy breaks down, it's a trickle effect. And that's happened too many times this year, John. And you look at some other thing. I put some stuff on the X account. Cornerbacks, gap discipline, cornerbacks not helping. Gap discipline, and just plain old simple football, John, of guys not getting off blocks. Guys just, look, John, this game will always be the same as far as you have to beat the man in front of you.
You got to block
get
and
the guy-
tackle, man. You got to block and
Right?
tackle. That's it.
Block and tackle. John, how many times running backs in a second level, then you see missed tackles, and now it's a huge chunk play. It's a combination of everything, and they just haven't gotten the job done. And, we remember that quote from Dable, hey, Shane, I need you over here to stop this run. Can you stop this run for me? Yeah, about all that stuff. They haven't stopped the run at all. And it's been worse and worse each week, and there's all kinds of different reasons for it. Tackling, guys in wrong fits, not getting off blocks. It could be little things. Like last week I put on something, Tay Banks is coming on a C-gap run with Chuba Hubbard, and he's taking an inside leverage when he has to be outside, funnel him into Bobby Okereke. Little things like that. All it takes is that one little thing, and now you go from a 3-yard gain to a 20-yard gain.
And that's the thing, like down to down, Chris, it hasn't been awful, but there's just too many of those chunk plays that just get killing them.
Absolutely. Yeah, breakdown and coverage at certain Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, his defense has been horrible yet. It hasn't. But it's been those 1, 2, 3 plays during the course of a game that has killed him. Now, last week was just a bad one because Chuba Hubbard he hurt them. From the first series on, they couldn't stop him. But other games during the course of the season, it'd be like 2 or 3 breakdowns. That's killed him. That's killed this team and give up huge plays, So, look, the run game, John, this team, looking forward, they need some help next to Dex. Big time. They're going to need a defensive lineman big time next to Dex. They're going to need a few things, but tackling has to get better. We've seen way too many missed tackles in big spots. And look, John, we're talking about the defense in the cornerback position that we felt going into the season that we only have to worry about one side of the field. Well, this season we've had to worry about both sides of the field because Tay Banks just hasn't had the second season that we expected.
Yeah, what's your take on Tay? Because I go back to the Philadelphia game where he had the play where obviously he didn't go all out to try to, tackle Jalen Hurts on that scramble. Then you look at other snaps, and he's not letting A.J. Brown get 5 yards off the line of
Yeah.
scrimmage, and he's beating the hell out of one of the best wide receivers in football at the line. It isn't an every down thing for him either.
No.
There's a few downs in every game where he's just not locked in enough, doesn't execute well enough, and when you're having a bad year, there are sometimes when you're having a good year, and every time you make a mistake, it doesn't burn your team. The quarterback doesn't look your way.
Hmm.
They don't run in your direction, whatever the situation might be. But this is a deal with Tay Banks and whenever he does make one of those mistakes, the ball's
Glaring.
going right at him. And the other
Yeah.
team, and the quarterback doesn't overthrow the pass, right? No. He's on the money every time.
Yeah.
Or the running back makes the right cut. Someone else doesn't get off a block. Whatever the case might be, it seems every one of those mistakes have been amplified.
Yeah, it's one of those years. But the one thing, John, you can never have an excuse for, and that's effort.
Sure.
And we know what's happened with Tay a few times this year. I'm not going to destroy this kid. I know a lot of people want to destroy him. I'm not. Like you said, John, he's also played a lot of good football. But unfortunately for him, it's been some bad football too. And what happens is we all know what's happened with the effort situation. There's been some plays that Jerome Henderson called him out. We all saw Jerome yelling at him on the side of the Jalen Hurts play. And there's no excuse for that, John. So he has to tighten it up. Tay has to realize, and I'm around Tay, John. You're around Tay more than me. He's a good kid. He's a good kid, Tay. But he has to realize that, hey, I'm in the NFL. I got to tighten some stuff up here because I won't be in this league long. And I had a guy in the locker room. We were talking about some things, younger guys, and the guy, a veteran guy looked at me and says, well, you know what NFL stands for if you don't start getting your stuff together. Tay's physical. Look, I think the system too, John, doesn't fit what he does best. I think he was better in the wing system. Now, that's not an excuse, everybody. You play to the system you are presented.
And by
And
the
you have
way,
to,
most systems in the NFL are zone systems now. People only play a man 25% of the time. So you
yes,
better be good at zone.
yes. And look, we all know Bowen is a 62% zone guy, whatever it is, something like that. He plays a lot of quarters, and I think Tay was a better fit for the last system. And man, like you saw physically, he was with AJ in that game. But that's not an excuse. You have to excel and adapt to the system your defensive coordinator presents. And he struggled at times this season, no question about it. But John, the bottom line is never an excuse for effort. And I've seen 2 or 3 plays from Tay Banks this year. We all have. This is not news breaking. We all know what's going on. We all know what's happened in the past. Where he can't have that, John. He has to realize that, hey, no matter what, I don't care if I get beat, whatever it is, you gotta bust it, man. And hopefully he's a young kid, second year in the league, and hopefully he realizes that. Because if that continues, he's just not gonna be around here. He's not gonna get a second, he's not gonna be around here much longer because that is not acceptable, John, to some of the things he's done.
Two
And it's
positives
a
on.
shame. And I'm sorry, John, one second.
No, go ahead,
It's a
please.
shame because it kind of overshadows some of the good football he's had. Like even that Eagle game, John, nobody talked about how he played AJ that game. AJ Brown, I'm sorry. How he played AJ Brown that game, right? Because of what happened with the Jalen Hurts play. So everybody wanted to talk about that. And nobody was really talking about how physical he was with AJ Brown. And AJ didn't do much that game. But that's what happened with effort plays.
No,
Can't
Chris,
have
I'm
it.
with you 100%. Two positives on defense I want to touch on. One is the pass rush. I mean, if you would have told me before the year that the Giants would be sixth in the NFL in pressure rate, first in sack rate, first in number of sacks, I would have sat here and been like, well, all right. I mean, the defense has got to be pretty damn good, right? But their pass rush has been very strong. They just have not put themselves in the position where they're making teams throw where that pass rush can impact winning or losing.
And that's what makes the turnover stat even more mind-boggling, John,
Right.
between us, because when you're up there with sacks, right, and pressure rate, and mind you, they only blitz like 26% of the time or something. Sheen doesn't blitz much. So it's been a fun four, and you have that much pressure, and you still get interceptions. That's what's that mind-boggling to me too, man. It's amazing. You don't see that very often. But John, yeah, to get back what you were saying, a lot of look, Dex has been unbelievable. We all know that, right? And Brian Burns too. Brian Burns has had Tibbs has been out. Aziz has got the 6 sacks. He's played well in his snaps since Tibbs has been out, getting to the quarterback. So yeah, that is a positive, no question about it. Brian Burns has been hurt for a while, and he's still out there, man, playing every snap, and he's had an impact up front too with the hits, the pressures, and I think he has 6 sacks now, and so that's been a plus, John. It's just amazing they haven't got more turnovers with the pressure rate they've had.
No, I'm with you. Other positive, I think, has to be the play of the young defensive backs. I know Tyler Nubin hasn't made as many plays on the ball as you might like,
Hmm.
but he does a great job of the line of scrimmage with his tackling. And Drew Phillips,
Yeah,
same deal. Around his physicality, the screen game, the way he plays that wide receiver screen game is really good. He sets the edge pretty well.
yeah,
Not afraid to go in there and tackle. You have to like the early signs from those two young guys, the Giants' second and third round picks this year.
yeah, John. You know what? And they're wired the right way. They're wired the way Joe Shane
Correct.
wants them. These kids of a bright spot. Look, I think Drew's like second in TFLs too. I think or second or third in the team in tackles for loss. He's doing that. He's a very physical slot kid. He's a huge plus this season. And Tyler Nubin, look, it's gonna come. It might not be this year, John, but Tyler was a ball hawk in Minnesota. He was a
Yep.
ball hawk in college. It'll come. It might not be this year, everybody, but it's gonna come down the road with him too. And he's physical up in that box. We've seen him a few times this year take on guards and just blow them up in blitzes. Real physical. So that's a big plus. I think they have two studs there, and they're wired the right way. They're exactly what Dable and Shane want in a football player, and that's big because they're the future of the team, right, John? I mean, look, and even Shane talked about it. Joe talked about it. When he was asked about McKinney and him leaving in free agency, and Joe was the first thing out of Joe's mouth was, "Hey, we're pretty happy with Tyler Nubin. This kid's played the most snaps than any rookies. He's up there with the tackles and all that stuff. It's a sucky part of the business. You got to let some good players walk out the door time, with the free agency stuff. But they're pretty happy with Tyler Nubin too, man.
All right, two more questions before we say goodbye. First, one more big picture thing, Chris, because I was thinking about this over the weekend. You're sitting there watching games on Sunday. You think how other teams are built to be successful, and you go, well, where are the Giants when you look at this, right? And I thinking about it, I'm like, all right, what's one of the toughest things to do? Get an elite edge rusher. Well, the Giants have one that's 26 years old. The Giants have an elite defensive tackle, a nose tackle, very difficult to find. That's what it was, Dexter, 27, something like that.
Yeah.
So young player, right?
Hmm.
All right, they have a franchise left tackle that's in his prime. All right, check the box there. You have a guy you think is going to be a number one wide receiver, another premium position where you got to spend money, your draft capital, to find a player at that spot. Check with Malik Neighbors. You feel like you have your starting running back on a rookie contract in a rookie year in Tyrone Tracy. You feel good about a safety in Tyler Nubin. But in terms of those premium spots, which I know has been a big focus of Joe Shane since he's gotten here, they have actually checked the boxes on a lot of those premium spots where they have players that you think are either already really good or you think are going to fill those roles and be really big, good players at those positions. Now, you still have a spot like corner where you're still trying to figure that out.
Right.
But there are pieces that the most critical spots that are good that I think you have something here that's a little bit better looking long term than the record might indicate.
Oh, absolutely. And Joe has signed those premium spots. He's signed Andrew Thomas to the extension. He's brought Brian Burns over here. And he drafts Malik Neighbors. So, like you said, some of these premium spots, they're looking good in. Not as the other stuff, but of course, the main thing is what, John? They got to get this quarterback situation, right? That's what they're going to have to hit on. They're going to have to get that. And then you could take it from there. Look, Joe talked about it in the presser, right? He goes, I don't feel like we're far off. I don't feel we're that far off. You could argue that, whatever. But that's what Joe meant. That's what, what Joe means by that is that, hey, we got premium spots. We got elite guys at the premium positions on the
And
field.
I think he meant far off from being a competitive team, not from being a
Right.
Super Bowl winner. You know what I mean?
No. If anybody
Right.
thought Joe was talking about Super Bowl contender, then that's their own agenda. No, that's not what Joe meant. He just meant from being a good football team because they have guys in the premium positions locked up. But obviously the big one, John, as we all know, is that you could have these guys all locked up all you want. But if you don't have that signal caller, if you don't have that leader behind center, that could, take the game to another level, then you're gonna have a hard time. And that's something obviously, that's gonna be the goal of this offseason, no question about it. You got to get that quarterback either veteran or via the draft, one or the other. But somebody different is going to be in here next year.
All right, final thing. They do play a football game in 5 days, Chris, believe it or not. Tampa Bay
Oh,
Buccaneers.
I thought the season was over.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers
forgot.
coming to town. And the Bucks, you look at it, the Bucks are similar to the Giants, just not to the extent. Like you look at a lot of the Bucks metrics, like they're record should be a lot better than it is. They've
Yeah.
lost a ton of close games this year, too. Now, they have a lot of injuries at wide receiver. I don't know the status of Mike Evans. I have not heard anything yet if he has a chance to be back yet this week. Obviously, Chris Godwin's out for the year. Baker's played well. They have two good running backs. Tristan Wirfs, I believe, is out, right, for a decent amount of time. He's not going to play in this game.
Yeah.
They blitz a lot on defense. That'll be something Tommy DeVito is going to have to deal with.
Oh,
But,
boy.
this is a game where the Bucs have kind of figured out ways to lose games this year in a lot of similar ways that the Giants have.
Yeah. But I tell you what, John, these guys, man, their last two losses, that Atlanta game and that 49er game, these guys are fighting, man, and they're shorthanded.
Oh yeah, they're playing close. Yeah, that's them saying like they're not getting blown out. Like they're playing
no,
tight, close games, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, these guys, they're running out of old friend out there, Sterling Shepard. That's who's in the receiving group.
It's amazing.
They've been devastated with injuries on the receiving side, and Baker's fighting, man. They're losing some close games, and all that stuff. So this will be a tough one. But this one Sunday, Todd Bowles is going to be. Oh, what? Who's starting? Oh, okay. He's going to be sending out. Todd's very aggressive, and they're going to be blitzing up the what Sunday at Tommy DeVito. So that's going to be a huge part of the game. And you know what? John? I'm happy for Shep. We all love Shep, right, man? I'm happy for him. He's getting some snaps now because of the injuries and all that stuff. So it'll be good to see him Sunday. I expect it to be a tough game Sunday, but it's going to come down to balls and that blitz and how Tommy handles it and all that. But yeah, it'll be a good one. Tampa Bay feels they're still hanging now with Atlanta losing 2 in a row. Tampa Bay feels they're still right there, so it's gonna be a huge game for them. Baker Mayfield, hey John, Baker's playing well, man.
I know
He's playing well. That guy's a different quarterback the last few years. I give him credit. I think we all saw the play last week when Bosa's hanging on his arm and he still makes a play to the running back.
He's stiff-arming him. Oh, he's throwing the pass. It was crazy.
Baker is a gamer. I give him credit, man. So it'll be a tough one Sunday, and we'll see what Tommy DeVito does and if he could provide that spark. So we'll see.
We will see. Chris, tell the folks where they can find all your work, my friend.
At Giant Insider on X, and the podcast is at Giant Insider newspaper and podcasts. And thanks again, John, for having me on. But it was good talking to you.
Always good talking ball with you, Chris. Really appreciate it. We'll see you here on Wednesday.
You're welcome. Yes, sir. See you Wednesday. That should be interesting in the locker room Wednesday too. I have a feeling there's gonna be a few people around Tommy's locker Wednesday afternoon.
Just a couple, I think, probably. Hopefully they'll clear out some space for us to all squeeze in.
And John, as you know, as a fellow Italian, I like talking to Tommy.
Absolutely. So. Chris, good stuff, man. See you on Wednesday, my friend.
Thank you.
That's the Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Thanks for being with us. For continuing coverage, check out the Giants Huddle podcast, Big Blue Kickoff Live. Just search for them on your favorite podcast platform. Go to the Giants app or go to giants.com/podcast. For Chris, I'm Schmeelk. We'll see you next time, everybody.